Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Practice on Fire, the podcast. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Gina Dorfman, a good friend of mine from way out in California. If you don't know Gina, she is not only running an unbelievable practice that we're going to talk about in a second, she's also the co-founder of Yappy, which is, without exaggeration, a life-changing dental software, at least in our hands. We couldn't practice without it. So welcome, Gina. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing here and what we're going to talk about?
Hey, Mike. Thank you for having me. A little bit about myself. I'm a mom. I have two children. I'm married. I have a practice just outside of Los Angeles, about 30 miles north of downtown. A very busy practice. I have several associates. It's kind of, my practice is actually very similar to yours. We have several doctors. We do pretty much just about everything in-house. And we have an amazing team that I was very fortunate to be able to build over the years. And about 6 years ago, we started, my dad and my husband and I, we started a software company, which was originally something that we designed for our office. It was, I kind of, scratched my own itch there. Everything that I've learned about efficiency and office flow and office communication, we've built into the software. And we're not, in Canada and in practices all across the United States. So it's been busy around here.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I've known you for several years now, and but always been impressed with your ability to get stuff done. To feel like you have a million things on the go, but really to make a lot of progress in all the different areas of your life. And when you say that our practices are similar, I think one of the ways that we're similar is that we both have fairly large size practices with a lot of people, a lot of doctors, and a lot of staff. So the first question I want to ask you is, the trend these days, and even in our Practice on Fire group, one of the hot topics is going small, focusing small. Don't try to be everything for everybody. Just become the expert in one thing, whether it's cosmetics, implants, sedation, whatever. And that is a really profitable, low stress way of going. But you and I have kind of gone the opposite way. You said it yourself. You do everything for everybody. Same with us. We've got, I don't know, like 12 doctors or so, including specialists. And help me understand, why do you choose to do that model and go against that hot trend these days?
I think it just fits my temperament. This is what I like. I like being around a lot of people. A lot of dentists nowadays say, I'd rather just do dentistry, and I don't want to manage people. I don't, team members are the biggest headache, and for me, this was always the fun part. So, I chose this. We have a mutual friend, Dave Maloli, and he talks a lot about lifestyle design. And for me, when I started building my practice, and I didn't do it intentionally back then. I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't until later that I looked back and I realized that when I was building my practice, I was building the practice that would support the lifestyle that I'd want to have. And for me, it was, having flexibility, being able to do this. I'm at home right now. I'm not at the office, but my practice is open. Right now, I have 3 doctors there, 3 hygienists, lots of amazing team members working. My software company is open, and here we are having a chat. And last year we've traveled quite a bit, and I was talking to a friend of mine who is a very successful dentist. He has an amazing practice. He's producing in millions. He has 2 little kids, and I was talking to him about my trip to Russia, and he said something like, I admire your, I think he said cosmopolitan lifestyle or something to that effect, that you were able to travel a lot and take time away. And I said, well, why can't you do that? And he said, well, who's going to be at my office? And so when I was building my practice, I wanted to have a practice where I was able to take time off, where I always known I wanted to have kids. I wanted to have a family, and didn't want to be an absentee parent, and to be able to enjoy dentistry. I really enjoy dentistry. I only do whatever I want to do. So, and of course, those guys who are doing those niche practices, they're also doing what they enjoy, right? Like Eric and Tim and Nate and Andrew, they're all choosing to do the things that they like the most, and they concentrate on that and they market, and that's another way of doing things. So you find what you like and you build your practice in the way that it supports your dreams, not open a practice and then become a slave to it and just work there all the time.
And that's what I love about our Practice on Fire group, where there's so many different people in that group with different lifestyles, different stages of their career, different practices. And it's nobody's intention to say, this is my path. If you just follow my steps, you're going to end up like me, or you should do it this way or that way. What I love about our group is that it just opens our eyes to different ways of thinking. And even if I am completely opposite to you, are there things that you bring to the table that just make me think, oh, that's just a new way of thinking, and how can I apply that to what I'm doing? And what I've learned is, I've learned a lot from you. I've learned a lot from Graham and Tim and Nate and Eric and Mike and Chris Phelps and all these guys, and just trying to pick and choose the best parts of each, not trying to be a copycat, just saying, oh, that's cool. I think I can learn from that. And one of the ways that you and I are similar is not just the size of our practices, but also the focus on the team, and how we both have an interest, a passion for doing it. And when we talk about staff management, there's a lot of what I think we both consider bad advice out there. So what kinds of common staff management advice is there out there that you wish people would just ignore?
How much time do we have here?
As much as you want. Let's go.
So, okay. So let me give you some of my favorite ones. We've all heard that we should expect our team to have the ownership mentality, right? And that's just bullshit. And the reason I say that is because, you and I, we're practice owners, right? We live it, we breathe it, we dream about it, we talk about it on WhatsApp, we go on Dental Town and Facebook, and I mean, that's our life, right? We bring it home with us, we work on weekends, we work at night sometimes. It's not ideal, but we do because we love it, because that's what we live for. Our employees go home and they have their own lives, and they have their own dreams, and they have their own families and their own problems and their own joys. And it doesn't make them bad employees. They're just employees, the best employees. And I have a lot of my employees at Yappy. And, at Yappy, a lot of the work is really creative. So, people come up with ideas at all times of the day. And so sometimes I get a text message from one of them, or like a Slack or a WhatsApp or whatever. There's so many communication channels now. And they're like, oh, I just came up with this great idea. And we chat about it. And I always say, look, you don't have to do it at night. And they're like, well, I just thought about it. So it's not that they don't, but we shouldn't be expecting it. Because when consultants tell us that we need a team with an ownership mentality, we set ourselves up for disappointment, because when they don't, we either assume that they lack motivation or that we're bad leaders. It's a trap. They're just employees. And they're also not friends and family, right? We have our friends and family. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be friendly. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't care about them. I truly care about my employees because well, first of all, part of leadership is being authentic, right? You got to be authentic. You can't pretend that you care. And I care about these people because I'm with them a lot of times. I like them. I spend a lot of time. I like them. I hired them because I like them. But they're not my friends and family. And I think especially for women, this is a problem. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups that are like for women dentists or practice owners. And a lot of them say, you know what, if I were a man, they wouldn't treat me this way. And part of it could be fundamental attribution error, but I think a lot of times because we feel, as women, we feel that we need to be very nice and very friendly, we tend to kind of cross that barrier, and then we cannot ask them for what we need. And we have a hard time confronting them about some of the issues that may need to be fixed. And then it becomes difficult to I don't want to say manage. I don't believe that we can either manage or motivate people, but it becomes difficult to manage the practice. And then, of course, my favorite one is, they're not our children either. There is lately been a notion, or I've been hearing this a lot, that employees are like children, and then that they intentionally test our boundaries and push limits just to see how much they can get away with. And I don't believe it's true either, because, well, first of all, I don't believe that kids intentionally push boundaries. I think that they're just growing and developing and learning about the world. I think that, the idea that a child just wakes up wanting to push the parents' buttons is flawed. I think kids do well when they can, when they know the adaptive behaviors they can, and they, manage through the day without pushing anyone's buttons. But more importantly, when we hire adults, we should expect them to have the adaptive behaviors to handle work environment and to come to work and, work, right? But, of course, it's human nature. We get distracted. There's social media, there's interesting gossip. I mean, all that stuff is part of being human. But I think most employees really want to do well. It's human nature to want to do well, to succeed, to be complimented and on their success, their work, their contributions, to be recognized, to grow. And it should be our natural selective process in growing our teams to, if you see someone who's testing your limits, they got to go. Mm-hmm. Or they might be in the wrong position. They might be bored. But naturally select for people who are interested in growing, who are self-motivated.
The other thing that you said was about the children analogy and how, something goes wrong in a practice. We have issues, and a lot of my colleagues, a lot of your colleagues, I'm sure, are the same, where their default assumption is, what's this person up to? Or what's their problem? Or why are they choosing to suck at their job?
Right.
Right. And I think you and I have the same mentality that's the opposite. We always go into a situation assuming that people want to do a good job. And if all people did was just flip that assumption as business owners, that people want to do a good job, when things don't go according to plan, maybe 1% of the time it's because they intentionally are trying to piss you off or have some agenda. But 99.9% of the time, they truly want to do a good job. And if you go in with that mindset, it just makes things so much easier in terms of how to fix these issues.
Absolutely, because, and I talked about it at the last Practice on Fire meeting. You hear a lot, how do I motivate people? And the problem, you can't motivate someone. You can't, motivation is internal. We're self-motivating. But sometimes what looks like lack of motivation is either lack of clarity or it's lack of systems. And what we can do for our employees, we can't motivate them, but there are a couple of things we can do. First of all, we can create clarity for them. That means telling them what to do, telling them how to do it, creating specific systems for accomplishing things, and also explaining why we do things the way we do. This is one of the things that Laura Hatch talks a lot about. We may tell them, look, you need to answer that phone, but unless they understand the real purpose behind it, what we're trying to accomplish, why are we saying things the way we're saying them? Here's your script. That's one part of it, but why? This is where you create clarity and you make it easier for them to self-identify whether they're the right person or not. Now, don't forget that sometimes you can have the right person on the wrong bus. Not everyone is going to come into my practice and say, I love it here. This is it. This is for me. When you hire someone, the very first thing you want to do is create clarity of who you are as a business, as a practice, as what your vision is, where you want to go. People have to sign up for it. And because if they don't, and later you try to impose something on them, this is when that resentment comes in, right? So the first thing.
How do you create that clarity? How do you let them know what you're all about and what you stand for?
You know what? I have a painted picture of where my practice is going, of what I want to do.
But do you mean you sit down with them and you have this discussion with them?
Absolutely. And I have regular meetings where I reinforce that belief, because sometimes values change. I started my practice 15 years ago. Some of the things have changed. Some of my beliefs have changed over time. And some of the things that I was doing before that were kind of natural to me, I didn't know why I was doing them. Now I have a theory. Now I can explain that. Absolutely. I have meetings with them. And, dentists hate meetings because a lot of times it's just like a bitch fest, right? Everyone has an agenda and everyone is upset. I don't have those kinds of meetings. If we have a problem that we need to discuss, we discuss it regularly. I don't do performance evaluations because, why would I wait till the end of the year to tell them all the things that we're doing wrong? If I am going to have a meeting with them, I'm going to tell them what they were doing right and where they can improve. In fact, my management style, if I see someone underperform in a certain area, like there was a mistake made, right? What I would normally do is I would approach that person right away, as soon as possible, and say, look, I like what you did there, but this is the part that needs to be improved. This is where we can grow together. But I think it's more important to catch them doing things right. Because remember what I said earlier, everyone wants to be acknowledged. And when you catch people doing things right, they feel acknowledged. They want to do more of that. And actually, that's not just good employee management. I hate the word management, but it's not just a good employee It's a good practice management strategy in general. It's a good business growth. A lot of dentists tend to concentrate on the negative. It's that negativity bias, what's not working, let's fix it. And sometimes they get so stuck in fixing everything that's negative that they completely ignore what's working. And it should be just the opposite. We should be scanning the horizon on what is working here. What am I doing right? Where is it consistently hitting and paying me back? And then just double down and Chris Phelps is amazing at that. I mean, he has the eye for spotting things that work, cutting the losses, and, growing what works, and that's how he's been a serial entrepreneur, because he was able to do that. He had some practices that weren't working, sold that, doubled down on the one that was working. Notice that, seniors didn't have in-house insurance, created in-house insurance, started going to senior homes. I mean, this is a great way to grow your business, and that's an amazing way to grow your team. You find what's working and you double down on that. And the same thing, like you were saying, we assume that people just suck at their job because they intend to suck. They come to the office with an intention to suck. And, that, a lot of times, sometimes it's true, but most of the time, they're either in the wrong job, or there is not a good system, or maybe they haven't been trained. How do we train dental assistants or front office? We either hire an experienced person and assume that because she has experience, she's going to just waltz in and take care of everything the right way, the way we want it, without any communication, any feedback from us. Or we hire an experienced person and then say, okay, sit here next to Debbie. I think it was your term, learn by osmosis, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. I'm like, you know what? I always needed the term for this. And, and Debbie does communicate some things, doesn't communicate others. It's not a great, and then the next day, this, new employee is answering the phone. Or another thing, I hear all the time, well, they don't have time to call past due patients, with recall or balances or whatever. They don't have time to call, or they're not good at it, or we don't have any patients to call. And when you look at it, there's like 3,000 past due patients, or no one wants to schedule. But the reality is, do we ever teach them how to make those calls? I mean, essentially, they're doing cold sales, right? They're just dialing for dollars there. But did we teach them how? And what happens is they make a few calls, they get rejected, they feel like they suck at this job, and they find any excuse. I mean, who wants to keep doing things that you suck at?
Right. And they don't understand that what's the definition of sucking versus success, right? If you make 10 calls and book one patient, maybe that's awesome. Who knows? I don't know.
Right.
Is that good or bad? They assume,
Exactly.
right? And I think, when you describe all these things, it's really fascinating to me that you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, and we're running like the exact same practice. Everything you said is pretty much exactly the way that we do it. So, when you describe these things, it all sounds so easy. Right? But we know that, in any survey, staff management is almost always number one or number two sources of stress for dentists. So what are most dentists doing wrong that's making things more difficult than it really should be?
Absolutely. Well, we kind of covered a lot of that. So let's talk about what maybe they should be doing to make it a little easier. And, for me, it was trial and error. But the reason why I think I've been more successful with this is because I actually enjoy doing this. And I enjoy trial and error. I'm not even a problem solver, I'm a problem seeker. I like to find interesting problems and resolve them. And I think a lot of what I had accomplished in life comes from that. But the first thing, and I already mentioned it, you need to figure out what you stand for and what the vision of your practice is. And you really need to make sure that every single person in your practice understands that. That's not just throwing some words on the wall and, having company values. I mean, of course, that's important, but it's really just communicating the vision, the everyday vision. Imagine that you're standing outside of your practice 3 years from now. You got into that time machine, you traveled, and you're standing in front of your office, and what do you see? What does it look like? You walk in, how does the front office greet your patients? What does the front office look like? And then, you continue through the office and you're noticing all these little details. You got to spell it out. They're not just going to know what you want. They're not just going to know what's in your head. If you're always in the back office, if you're always busy with patients, then how do you know what your employee is doing in the first place? And how do they know what they should be doing? They don't. So communicate your vision. And then, why are you doing things that you're doing? The second thing that we're not doing is we're not creating systems. And when I say systems is, the simplest thing, if you imagine, I don't like McDonald's, but if you go to McDonald's and get chicken nuggets, you get a box and there's a few chicken nuggets there. If you put less, they're going to be too wiggly. If you put more, they're not going to fit. I mean, that's a system. The box was designed for those chicken nuggets. There's no variety. There's little room for screw up. And in your practice, it's a lot easier to create those systems. It takes so much time to do it, so much time. But once you create those systems, then who said this? Michael Gerber said that you manage systems and your employees, no, you create systems and your employees manage them, something like that. So you don't have to manage people. You create systems and the systems guide people's behavior. That's very common in businesses that are consistently performing well. And when you go to a practice that is a complete mess and you look around and everyone is doing their own thing. And the problem is that there's always turnover. Even, great employees leave, bad employees leave, things happen. Sometimes they find other jobs, their family situations change, your situations change. You suddenly decided they're not right for your practice anymore. So they leave. And then you have to train a new person again from scratch. But if you have the systems always stay and they're always the same. So creating those systems, taking the time to sit down and write down, okay, this is how we're going to do this. And don't do it by yourself. You're not the smartest person in the room. I mean, you might be, but I'm definitely not. I don't know how to do my dental assistant's job. I worked as a dental assistant for about 2 months and I sucked. I was literally I don't know why they kept me for I kept getting distracted. My head is always full of ideas. I never knew where the burrs were. It was a complete mess. I couldn't suction without stabbing a patient. I was a worst assistant ever. Why would I write her SOP if I don't know what works? Get the people involved.
And this is one of those areas where you and I differ, where I've seen some of your SOPs and they are very, very impressive. And it's just not something I can do. And so in our practice, we're kind of the opposite. We don't have really anything written down. We don't have any manuals or systems, but that's a talk for another day. We'll talk about that some other time. Now, the one thing you said, right?
It's okay to disagree.
I steal plenty of your ideas, just not this one. The one thing that you said when you first started answering this question is you said that you've succeeded because you really enjoy the people side of it and dealing with your employees and growing them and developing them, which is great, but I think that's very odd, right? It's not normal for dentists to enjoy that. And I think most dentists really dislike that part of the job. They want to just focus on their patients and fixing teeth. So what would your advice be to that type of dentist who doesn't have a natural ability to do this and doesn't have any interest in managing the soft side of the practice?
That's a tough one because I think, if you want to run your own business, that part is part of running a business. You can't just go in and say, I just want to be a dentist, because then you have a job, not a business. So you may not enjoy it, but you still have to develop that skill. It's a skill, essentially, right? So, I don't like doing endo. I hate doing endo. I've tried and I took courses, and at some point I realized, I'm just not doing endo. I'm going to hire someone to do endo in my practice. And that's what I did. And so if you don't like the soft side of things, you have a couple of options. Don't be in the business for yourself, go work somewhere where you can concentrate on what you like, or try to develop that skill. Because sometimes, and I said that earlier, sometimes when we suck at something, we don't like doing it. But once we develop that skill, once we feel confident and comfortable doing it, then all of a sudden we're like, oh, you know what? This isn't bad. I can do this. Or hire someone to help you with that. And when I say someone, I'm thinking like an office manager who sort of completes you, who does the things that who picks up your drop balls, so to say.
And I like your analogy with the endo where, another one of the sayings that people have is, there's the many hats of dentistry. You have to do all these different things. And we feel like it's our responsibility to be the HR person, to be the therapist, to be the marketing person, to be the accounting person. and to do restorative and endo and surgery and everything. But that doesn't really make much sense. Like, why would you force yourself to do something that you suck at, that brings you a lot of stress? And even in the best case scenario, you're going to do at like a B grade level. Right?
Absolutely.
It's either develop the areas that you can become an A grade, or delegate those things out so you can focus on doing those things and get rid of the endo, get rid of the pedo, get rid of the HR, get rid of the accounting, and pay somebody to do it at an A level. There are people out there that, as crazy as it sounds, love endo, or they love pedo, or they love HR, or they love hiring, or they love finance. Find these people, and that's how you can build your team.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no way you can do it all yourself. And all those different things require different set of skills, different set of personalities. And, because time is limited, if you really, the only success formula, here's the only silver bullet. And if anyone takes anything away from this conversation, I want it to be that. Concentrate on what you do best. Give your time to that. Things you love to do and things you are good at. And everything else, delegate it out to people who love it or who are best at that, and that's going to let you grow. Because if you are going to try to do everything, you're going to be like that hamster that does everything, the jack of all trades, and doesn't accomplish anything.
So you are obviously very, very successful in your software practice, your dental practice, but I'm sure you have your flaws and your moments. So what's
No.
never? But share with just the three people that are listening today. What's your kryptonite? What's holding you back? What's your fatal flaw that's stopping you from reaching the big goals that you want to do?
I am a very high fact finder. So I'm also I'm a 8 fact finder, and I'm a 6 quick start. And so I'm in that constant mode of, oh, I have a great idea. Oh, I'm going to do this. And then I get stuck in research. So I actually just recently finally finished my ebook about going paperless in a dental office. And I started writing it like a year ago. And it's not that big. It's 60 pages. But I was so stuck in the research part and then writing and rewriting. And finally, my marketing guys were like, that's enough. This is it. We're taking this over. It's published. Okay. This is it. So that's really been, and the thing is, I realized that I will never have all the facts. I will never have enough information. But I'm in a way a perfectionist. I want it done perfectly. I don't want to miss anything. And then I'm realizing that, the best thing I can do is just at some point saying, you know what, good enough is good enough. So that's what I've been working
on. So in the past year, what bottleneck have you removed in your personal life or in your practice that's made the biggest difference?
I am the bottleneck. I had to remove myself from a lot of projects because, I tended to have a hand in everything. Okay, this ad has to have my approval. This has to have my approval. I'm going to rewrite this because I don't like the way it's written. And all these projects from different employees were coming to my desk and getting stuck essentially. And there's still a little bit of that. I mean, like I said, I am having a hard time letting go some of those things, but I've also learned to delegate better over the years. I can't say it happened last year. I've been on a path to doing that. So I've learned how to delegate better. I've learned that if I give more direction up front, then, the project comes back to me and there's a lot less micromanagement that I need to do. I've also learned that micromanagement is a sure way to kill any creativity. People don't blossom when you're constantly looking over their shoulder. And like you said, if they come to you with an idea and you say, nah, I don't think that's going to work, they might try one more time, but they're not coming again. So I had to, that was my bottleneck. I was too involved with everything and just, and letting loose. And, you know, I still believe in trust and verify, but if you give direction up front and you also give them if that then, and if this then this kind of scenarios up front, then they can just finish the project for you. And also being a fairly low follow through, I really needed to have others around me who I could delegate out to. And being able to delegate is what helps me accomplish things. There's absolutely no, you said earlier, I'm doing so many things. I'm actually doing a lot less now. And I'm a lot happier this way and more gets done.
Right. So when I asked the bottleneck that you've removed, the bottleneck is you in a lot of these situations. And I think what I've learned as well is you can't grow what we have, what you and I have, without delegating and without shifting our focus from fixing problems to growing people. And those people will help to identify and fix problems. And one of the problems with doing that is dentists in general are perfectionists and find it very difficult to delegate. But what we all have to understand at some point is, yeah, you know, past a certain point of completion on a project, the return on more time in it gets lower and lower and lower. And at some point, it's pretty much as good as it's going to get. And any improvement is just to satisfy our own, anal retentive ways and not really to make any difference in the outcome.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's circle back to the original topic where, all this started when we were talking about growing our teams and what kinds of advice we should and shouldn't follow about staff management. So to wrap up, I can ask you one more question just to summarize. What's the one thing that people can do? And if they follow this advice, then 80% of the stress, frustration, questions on Facebook, downtown about staff management, all those things would disappear if people would just do what?
That, who was it? Zig Ziglar, right? Um, yes, the story of a frog. Like if you put a frog in hot water, it'll jump out, right? But if you put the frog in a cold water, it'll sit there and tolerate and tolerate and tolerate, and essentially boil to death, right? So a lot of us are like those frogs. We just tolerate and tolerate. We have this maybe underperforming employee, but we hold on to her because, it's hard to find good people, and maybe the next one would be even worse. And I don't have time to train, and it's not a good time for me right now. And it's right before Christmas, and like make all of those excuses. And then we see someone doing something that we don't like, but we don't feel like confronting her. And, there might be something else that you need to do. You think about doing it later, and later it passes, and then 2 weeks later, you don't even want to talk about this. And then it happens again, and you keep tolerating. And essentially, what you occasionally tolerate becomes something that you tolerate all the time. And so the answer to that question is, I think that 80% of the problems would go away if dentists would just stop tolerating and take control of their practices, which is easier said than done, but that's essentially the answer to
right.
that.
So your advice is essentially telling people to grow some balls, right?
That's right.
When something happens, good or bad, this is the moment of truth where you're either going to accept it and therefore encourage it to happen again and again and complain about it, or you got to do something about it.
You stand for what you tolerate. Yeah. Simple as that.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Tons of great information there. Always enjoy chatting with you. I think the hardest part about our chat today is that I had to really fight the urge to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into some of the things that you said. So we got to do another episode one day and dig deeper into some of the topics.
Absolutely. And I will be speaking about some of these topics at the Practice on Fire event in San Diego that's coming up. So very, very excited about that.
Yeah,
I wrote about 15 hours of lecture, so now I got to condense it a bit.
Oh, that's the high fact finder. I'm just starting mine. I'm going to steal a lot of what we talked about today and put it in the lecture. So practiceonfirelive.com is where you can hear more about this stuff. You're going to hear from some of the names that we talked about, including Chris Phelps and Tim Rao, Nate Geel, Eric Jones. And the goal of Practice on Fire is to bring together like-minded dentists from all different types of dentistry. And again, not suggesting that we have a secret formula that if you just follow these things, everything will be just fine. But if all that happens in this weekend is you find a new way to think about a problem, or you find a new opportunity that you didn't know about before, or if you just open your eyes to something fresh and exciting, then we'll consider it a big success. So check us out, practiceonfirelive.com, and we'll see you next time on the next Practice on Fire podcast.